So welcome. We finally get to week 5 after taking a little break last week. It is honestly, such a beautiful, it's a shorter portion, but especially for us women, such a beautiful portion. Obviously, it's not only about women. Yes, the portion is called CHAYEI Sarah, which Sarah in Hebrew, Sarah, right? The life of Sarah, but connecting it spiritually with the bride, which is the whole church. And I love, love, love this portion. In this portion, we were to cover Genesis 23, verse 1 to 25, verse 18. So not the entire chapter of chapter 25 was covered for this portion. We will continue on the second half of 25 the following week. And then we have for the Haftara portion, First Kings chapter 1, and the Brit Chadasha, we have Matthew, Luke, John, and First Corinthians. So very short portion, but rich in the connection. So I want to go ahead and I guess just give a little brief introduction. Assuming y'all read your portions, you had 2 weeks this time to read. And again, I do think it was a shorter portion, so I pray that you guys did. I'm not gonna lie, I failed to go back and read Jasher. I had told myself I'm gonna read the account of Jasher for this portion just so we can connect the dots, but it's been crazy. A lot of changes, like I shared before the recording began, in my personal life, a lot of things taking place, but all praises to Abba. I'm pretty sure one of you read or will remember, and we can all share and come to conclusions, precept upon precept. So again, Hayei, Sarah, life of Sarah. So this part of the story starts with the death of Sarah at 127 years old. Man. So Abraham buys the cave of Machpelah to bury her. This becomes the first piece of land actually owned by a Hebrew in Canaan, meaning by Abraham, right? And we see that we saw that in oh my goodness, in Genesis 23. Then we see Abraham making sure Isaac has a wife. Beautiful portion on that account on its own. And again, he sends his servant Eliezer back to his homeland to find someone. With Abba's guidance, the servant meets Rebekah at a well, and she agrees to marry Isaac. And that part is in Genesis 24. Then Genesis 25, the portion wraps up with Abraham's final years. He marries Keturah, has more children. Eventually, he dies at 175 years old. And both Isaac and Ishmael come together to bury him next to Sarah or Sarah. Let me see. Okay, so the name Sarah means princess or noble woman in Hebrew. And again, this is Sarah with the H, because if you guys remember, before he changed her name, it was just Sarai. And it did not have the same meaning. When he changes her name is when it actually means princess. So in Hebrew, and it comes from the root word sar, which is connected to ruling or authority. Her name really reflects her role and purpose, excuse me, in the bigger story. Through Sarah, the Most High's promise of a great nation begins to unfold, making her a foundational matriarch and a central figure in the history of Israel. And we will connect a few, stories within, like I said, the Brit Chadasha, which is the New Testament, and also the Haftorah, which is the in this case, the book of Kings, First Kings to be exact. So again, Sarah's new name as princess highlights her dignity and the significant role she plays in the biblical story. Sarah's importance is highlighted through the Most High's covenant with Abraham, where he promises that Sarah will become a mother of nations and that kings of peoples will come from her. And again, that's where I see First Kings connecting mostly with this portion. I'm going to stop here before I continue. I'm going to go ahead and share Genesis 23, where we're supposed to start. Sorry, let me just make sure you guys can see what I see. Okay. So again, so I'm not gonna read by line Genesis, the Genesis part, but I do want to read fully First Kings and probably the New Testament portions, given that they are shorter, right? So we have in Genesis 23 again the Sarah's death and burial, and in this chapter, what we see again is very short, and what we see is not only how old she was when she passed, but the purchasing of the cave of Machpelah. And I think, let me see, where is it exactly? Okay, here on verse 9. Where he purchased, when he asks to purchase the cave. So this is the first time that we see mention of this cave in Machpelah with the burial of Sarah. And from moving forward from there, we see all of the forefathers, meaning Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the sons, all the main tribes are put to sleep. And I say put to sleep because we know when they die, it said, they went to sleep, right, in this cave. And then we see how later on, even when Joseph was in Egypt, we see how he asks to make sure when the Israelites would come out of Egypt, to make sure that his bones are taken out of Egypt and taken with them, right? And we see that not only Joseph's bones are taken out, but also the rest of the tribes, meaning Judah, Levi, all of them. It is my understanding that they were taken out of Egypt, those that have passed in Egypt, which I believe was all of them. And then, because they were to be buried at this same place. And there is a reason. I believe there is a reason for that. I remember the first time that we covered this portion, we spoke about the mysteries behind them sleeping together, meaning that sounds weird when you say it like that, but you know what I mean, putting to sleep spiritually together, like their bodies resting together in that place. We saw later how in Matthew, when Messiah not resurrects, but when Messiah is crucified, immediately when he dies, we see the dead come out of the tombs, and people seeing these people walk like in front of them, like basically come out of the tombs, which I believe had to do a lot with this, with the righteous people that have been put to sleep prior to Messiah. And we also see King David and the rest of the kings were also buried in the same place. Again, this whole chapter has to do with this, so I'm gonna go. Let me see something. Did I put?
I just wanted to add, because on Joshua thou speaks. So Sarah, when she passed, and in her mind, her son was dead.
In the book of Joshua.
She never, or based on reading it, she didn't know that he did not die, that he was not sacrificed, because it's not like, oh, Abraham and Isaac went to do the sacrifice and came back the very next day. They stayed away there. As a matter of fact, when she died, Abraham was not even there.
So in the book of Joshua, I do remember, Sylvie, also, not only did she die prior because of a heartache, basically she died from a heartache, but remember, I don't know if you ladies remember that Satan himself came as like an old man and told her, and shows up to her and tells her, your son is dead. And because of this is what led her to die from, basically, I want to say, a heart attack or from so much, because again, we're speaking about a 127-year-old person, right? So her heart could not imagine it. It was her only son. So yeah, it was that. I remember crying with that.
Yeah, it says here, and Satan went to Sarah, and he appeared to her in the figure of an old man, very humble and meek. And Abraham was yet engaged in the burnt offering before the Most High. And he said to her, meaning the devil. Do you not know all the works that Abraham has made with thine only son this day? So basically, he was the one that told her this. For he took Isaac and built an altar and killed him, and brought him up as a sacrifice upon the altar. And so those are the words I'm reading straight from Joshua.
Yep, that's exactly what happens.
And she lifted her voice and wept and cried bitterly out of account of her son. And she basically died of sadness.
I know, which is so sad. So sad. And then later, obviously, we see Isaac coming back and then finding out his mother had passed. It was a really sad portion, for sure. However, like I said, she was already older, and we're gonna see later connections with the promise for those who died in righteousness in First Corinthians. But before I get to that, is there anything else that you guys wanted to add from this very first chapter 23, her death and her burial, or questions that you may have? Anything with the cave, the meaning of the purchasing of the cave, like what was the motive, the reason for Abraham? Because we see that Abraham offers more money than what the cave is actually worth. It was indeed very important to him.
I don't know. I was just thinking the same because, like, I'm not sure here, but I know that like where we come from, normally our families, like when you die, everybody gets buried together, like in the cemetery. Like they buy all the spots together. And so like now reading this, I'm like, oh, maybe that's why. But like I remember like my great grandma and my grandma and like my grandpa, they're all buried like in the same like place, like one on top of each other, pretty much.
My grandpa, when he passed, I remember they purchased already. Thankfully, my grandma is still alive, but they purchased a like a space for when it is her time, so she could be next to him. And it's funny you say that. I do remember when we did this portion, we spoke about this, and it is my belief, anyhow, that today they do it not so much because of that understanding, but maybe, deep inside, there's something in the people that still remains from eternity that tells them, stick your family together, right? Make sure they're close by. And why I say this, because I do believe that the reason why this was so important to Abraham is because he understood the resurrection of the dead. And I think that there's a reason for having all these men, lines of kings, again, being sleeping in the same place together. And like, again, we're going to read at the end in First Corinthians what Paul has to say. But if you see here, we see on verse 11 where it says, "No, my Lord, hear me. I give you the field." And this is Ephron, by the way. Actually, let me read from 10 so that you guys can see the full thing. From 9, actually. So this is Abraham speaking to Ephron, right? That he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he has, which is at the end of his field. Let him give it to me at the full price. This is Abraham telling them, as property for a burial place among you. So now Ephraim dwelt among the sons of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the presence of the sons of Heth, all who entered at the gate of his city, saying, "No, my Lord." So this is now Ephron again answering Abraham. "Hear me, I give you the field and the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of the sons of my people. I give it to you." So in other words, Ephron was offering the cave for free. Like he's saying, "No, I will give this to you. Like in presence of all my people, like I'm giving this to you, like bury your dead," right? But look, verse 12, then Abraham bowed himself down before the people of the land. And he spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, "If you will give it, please hear me. I will give you money for the field. take from me, and I will bury my dead there. So we see that Ephron offers it for free, and Abraham's like, nope, I'm gonna pay you, right? And we see on verse 15 how much he paid. He says, my Lord, listen to me. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? So bury your dead. So Ephron is still bargaining, like, what is that, like, this is what it's worth, but just bury your dead. But Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out the silver for Ephron, which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, currency of the merchants. So we see that Abraham bargains not to get it for free, but to actually pay for it. So there is a reason for this. I'm going to go to the slides again. I'm going to read this one just so it could be in order before I read the next one. So going back to, again, Sarah, we have Abraham and Sarah show us what it really looks like to live out a faith that takes action. Again, faith plus works, right? The steps they took in obedience to the Most High required incredible trust, often without knowing what was ahead. Time and again, they responded with full commitment, not holding back or clinging to the life they left behind. And that is the key of all this story, not clinging. The opposite of what Lot's wife did, right? Not clinging to this life or what was left behind, but instead clinging on to eternity. So through faith, both Sarah and Rebecca left behind their families, former ways of life, and we're going to speak about Rebecca shortly, and the idolatry they once knew, to walk in the path Abba set before them. They stood alongside their husbands in this calling, showing love, compassion, and generosity that went far beyond the norms of their time, beautifully reflecting the heart of the Torah. And I put this little thing that I found. It's actually a shirt that I found on Google. And I thought it was so beautiful because we see that it was not only Sarah who clinged on to the promises of the Most High, but we also see it in Rebecca, and we also see it in Rachel, whom happens to also be the beloved of Jacob. So again, Sarah being the Abraham's wife, Rebecca being Isaac's wife, and Rachel. We know Leah is also Jacob's wife, but we know the story, and we know Rachel is the one that he really wanted. So all three of these women had to have an incredible amount of trust because all three of them were barren, and these are the matriarchs. So there's connections even with that, which is why I put here faith in the little hands graphic here. But going back to the cave of Machpelah, we have that, and by the way, I put a little graphic here to show, according to the maps that they show us, right, where this cave was located. I know it's very blurry, but we see down here Edom, and we see up here Syria, and where's the Red Sea? I believe this is this. So the land of Canaan, okay, right here, yes. The land of Canaan, which is the promised land, is right over here. Sorry, I was trying to find, I'm like, where is it? Because it's so blurry. So the cave is not in the land of Canaan, which I thought was very interesting, but more so on the side of Damascus, over here by Syria. So we see the cave of Machpelah, and this was what Abraham purchased for a burial for his people. So again, it is also called the Cave of the Patriarchs. It is a deeply meaningful historical and spiritual site near ancient Hebron in Israel. It's known as the burial place for several foundational figures in the Bible: Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah. According to tradition, Adam and Eve are also believed to be buried there. And again, I can't confirm this, but it is believed that they were, and I wouldn't put it past me, honestly. I believe there's a reason why it was so important to Abraham to purchase this cave, right? So I want to lean to believing Adam and Eve would also be there. So after, and obviously not only them, but even Shem and all of them, right? So after Sarah's death, Abraham approached the Hittites to secure a proper burial place for her. He ended up negotiating with a man named Ephron, son of Zohar. Interestingly, Ephron's name can be linked to meanings like place of dust and source of light, which feels symbolic in this moment. And we know that because place of dust, what does the word say? From dust we come, and to dust we shall return. So I thought it was very, very, very interesting. And also source of light, because we know truly who we are inwardly, inside, our spirit is light. Very symbolic indeed. So initially offered to give Abraham the cave and surrounding field at no cost, but when Abraham insisted on paying, like I said before, Ephron named a price of 400 shekels of silver, a steep amount considering land usually sold for 17 to 50 shekels at the time. His casual remark was, "What is 400 shekels between us?" Suggests he was exploiting Abraham's grief and urgency, using polite language to mask an inflated deal. So I thought it was pretty interesting, the way that he basically went on and agreed for such a high price, indicating he was willing. So moving on to chapter 14, 24, not 14, where am I? This portion right now is beautiful, and it's the search for the bride for Isaac. So we now see that Abraham is getting older, right? We see that he sees Isaac clearly becoming a young man, and we have to remember the promise that the Most High had given Abraham through Isaac. The promise shall be fulfilled, the son of faith, right? Not by the flesh, but by faith. And so Abraham wants to see at least the beginning of this fulfillment through Isaac. And so he sends, we know the story, he sends his servant to seek a wife for his son from the land of Canaan, from his people. And this was very important for Abraham. We obviously know that Ishmael had married not women that were of the seed, of his people. So we know what came about from that. And it was very important for Abraham to fulfill the promise through the righteous seed. And we see another connection here that I always think is so crucial and important, is how Abraham has his servant make a covenant with him, putting his, where it says here, "Please put your hand under my thigh and swear," like an oath, that you would pick a daughter of the Canaanites among whom I dwell. And again, we have already spoken about the connection with the thigh, and the connection with Messiah, having written on his right thigh when he comes back in the book of Revelation, right? King of Kings, Lord of Lords. We also have spoken about in the past how it was his thigh that gave away when he was trying to breathe on the cross. So there is a deep connection with the thigh and the oath, right? And the covenant. So I wanted to also bring that back up. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to add from this chapter. I know I have a few things, but I want to hear from you ladies, what you guys saw, connecting, what you recall, what you see now or what you saw before, because we know the process of him sending his servant to Canaan to find a wife for Isaac is very foreshadowing. Extremely foreshadowing. So before I keep, speaking and hearing my own voice, I want to hear you ladies. I know the chat was going on and I forgot to check. Yes, Yasmin. So anything else? I don't know why I keep seeing like a new message.
I was gonna say the story that Sylvie had shared from the book of Joshua, when how like actually like the enemy was like, he popped up, I think it was to Abraham, when he was gonna give, like, is that the story that Sylvie was talking about, when Abraham was gonna sacrifice Isaac and then the enemy appeared as like an old man like
No,
more
no,
than once? Or
no, no,
that's
no. That's yeah. Well, I mean, it's the same Satan, trying to trick Abraham. But no, this was later when they what's it called when Sarah when they were already coming back from doing the sacrifice with the lamb, he
mm-hmm.
appears to Sarah to deceive her, and that's how she passes away. And I believe the goal of Satan with that was basically to bring about, clearly he couldn't stop the plan of the Most High with Abraham. Abraham was already declared the father of faith, and
Mm-hmm.
through him all the promise um would come to pass, right? However, I believe Satan was just trying to derail that by any means, because by taking away Sarah from the picture, it was going to bring discouragement, depression, deep sadness, you name it. So not that that was ever going to stop the plan of the Most High, but I guess Satan just does whatever he can when he has no other way to bring people down, right?
Yeah.
And
You'll
something important to, yeah.
No, I was saying that he just comes to steal, kill, and destroy in every shape and form. Always.
Absolutely. I was gonna say it's interesting how he always attacks the heart, right? The emotions.
Yes.
How we were speaking about before.
Hope deferred makes the heart sick.
So we should always guard our hearts. That is number one. But going back to the chapter 24 that we are on, um, we see the servant obviously putting his hand under the thigh of Abraham and swearing, an oath that he would take a wife from his people. But something I did want to, in case you guys forgot, or because I know we took a break last week, so I don't know how far ago you guys read this, but the interesting thing to me that immediately stands out is that when his servant goes onto the land, it says here on verse 11, and he made his camels kneel down outside the city, meaning outside the city of Canaan. So outside the promised land, because we know Canaan is the promised land, right? Outside the city by a well of water, right? And it says the time when women go out to draw water. So there's so many connections and just that verse right there. And then he prays to the Adon and says, please give me success this day and show kindness to my master Abraham. Behold, here I stand by the well of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. And this is what he asks. He says, now let it be that the young woman to whom I say, please let down your pitcher that I may drink. And she says, drink, and I will also give your camels a drink. Let her be the one you have appointed for your servant Isaac, and by this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. So his prayer was that whomever asked, please let down your pitcher that I may drink, and she says, drink, and I will also give your camels a drink, that would be the wife for Isaac, right? So we know that the one that fulfills that is Our Lady Rebecca, right? And we know that she is the son, she was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother. So she is indeed from Abraham's kin, right? So she is from the righteous seed. So again, we see another similarity between Sarah and Abraham, and then Isaac and Rebecca, right? So came out with her pitcher on her shoulder. So again, we know that she was a virgin, and all of this connects so beautifully in the spiritual sense. This woman was without sin, right? And it says no man had known her. And she went down to the well, filled her pitcher, and came up. And so we know the rest of the story, that the same prayer that the servant had asked the Most High, it came to pass with Rebecca. And so we see as a result of that, it says on verse 22, so it was when the camels had finished drinking that the man took a golden nose ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her wrists weighing 10 shekels of gold and said, whose daughter are you? Tell me, please, is there room in your father's house for us to lodge? So before I continue, we already know that he goes and proposes to Bethuel, for his daughter to be given in marriage to Isaac. But this is so cool. I always think it's so cool how what he gave her as a sign of this covenant was a nose ring and the 2 bracelets of gold. I always have liked that. You know, before I used to think like, I remember I had a nose piercing before, and then I took it off because I felt like, oh no, that it's not, you know, of the Most High or whatever. And then I came across this precept and I'm like, oh, but wait, nose rings were a thing. So anyhow, I'm not telling people go and get your nose pierced, but I'm just saying I always thought it was so cute. But anyhow, continuing forward, we see how the young woman is Rebecca. Obviously, her brother is Laban, and later we're gonna see that this same Laban is the father of Leah and Rachel, whom later marry Jacob, the same son that Rebecca has through Isaac. So you see how everything so beautifully connects from the beginning, the whole family. And anyhow, so anything you guys want to add to this before I connect it? Because so rich and so foreshadowing and so prophetic of the bride of Messiah, by the way. Are y'all here, or I'm not just seeing? Oh, sorry. I had missed the message. And the mind. What did you mean, Eileen? I'm sorry. I'm not sure when you
No,
said.
I was saying that you were making a comment that the devil attacks the heart, and I was just saying in the mind
Oh, okay,
too,
okay.
like your thoughts, you know, he gets in your thoughts.
Absolutely. Sorry, I saw that a little too late. I thought you were
It's
saying
okay.
it now. I'm like, what did she mean?
No, no.
Sorry. All right. So you guys don't want to add anything? Y'all here?
We're here. You know, when I read, I didn't see it obviously with like the whole connection with the water, like you're making it now. I just read it. I did see the when Abraham makes him, you know, make a covenant with him and his tie. That I did see that connection there. But as far as, you know, the woman by the well of water and him being by the water makes total sense right now.
Yes, and I'm gonna go ahead and skip all these other precepts that we were supposed to cover because I just want to go straight to John 4, where the Samaritan woman meets Messiah. And again, let's just recap a little bit. So let me just go back to Genesis just to point out where they were. So the servant was outside of Canaan, and that was in verse, wait, let me go back. Okay, here. Um, wait, where does it say? I lost it.
Right there,
Oh, here,
13.
verse 11, huh?
Oh,
Yes, verse 11. And he made his camels kneel down outside the city by a well of water. So outside of the city. And that is key right now because he's by a well of the water outside the city. Outside the city, to me, always makes me think of the tabernacle and the outer courts. How the outer courts of the tabernacle were for the Gentiles. And so outside the city, which we know Canaan at that time wasn't known as the promised land, meaning, you know, given to the Israelites, but it was, however, the promised land given to for Abraham to go to. And so we know that what Canaan in itself represents. And so the land of Canaan represents a the city of his people, basically of his bride, right? So you standing outside the city means that you are standing in a city that is with Gentiles, people that are not the bride. And so we see that this man is outside the city by a well of water. And so connecting that with John 4, which we were supposed to read for this portion, it just beautifully connects, because we're speaking about Samaria, right? And we know Samaria is outside of Jerusalem. Obviously, we later know that Canaan becomes Jerusalem, right? Canaan is the promised land where the Israelites dwelt. There is Jerusalem later on. Samaria, on the other hand, Samaria is outside of Jerusalem. And so anyone outside of Jerusalem is not considered later on a Jew or from the house of Judah, right? Anyone from the northern kingdom is considered now a Gentile, which is where the northern kingdom went, by the way. The northern kingdom, which were the 10 tribes of Israel that were left, went to Samaria, stayed in Samaria. Little bit of history here. And actually, let's read, let's read 1 Kings first. I'm going to read 1 Kings, and then I'm going to go back to actually, this is when Solomon was made king. You know what? I'll go back to 1 Kings later because it's not here. But in Kings, we see later when after Solomon's death is when the 12 tribes of Israel are split into 2 kingdoms, right? So Judah, together with the Benjamites, stay in Jerusalem. And that's what becomes the Jewish people, right? And then the rest of the tribes go to Samaria, which is the northern kingdom. And it's referred to Israel, the house of Israel and the house of Judah. So the house of Israel is considered Samaria. And so we see now Messiah in Samaria. So I'm saying all of this to connect the following. So let's just read it. It says, verse 1, therefore, when the Adon knew that the Pharisees had heard that Yasha made and baptized more disciples than John, though Yasha himself did not baptize but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. But he needed to go through Samaria. Again, he left Judea, which we know Judea is also Judah, it's also Jerusalem, right? So he went through Samaria, which is outside of the city, right? So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Yasha, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well. Are you guys seeing now the connection with the well? It was about the 6th hour. And we know the 6th hour, it's what, like 12 o'clock? It was around noon. So a woman of Samaria came to draw water. Yasha said to her, give me a drink. So he asks for a drink. I'm going to go take it back to Genesis, where the servant says, behold, here I stand by the well of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now let it be that the young woman to whom I say, please let down your pitcher that I may drink. You see how it connects so perfectly? Messiah says, give me a drink. The servant is looking for a bride for Isaac. What is Messiah doing here, if not looking for the bride? Ooh, outside of the city. It's so symbolic, guys. Verse 8, for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Then the woman of Samaria said to him, how is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. And let's take a little break here. We know that after the 2 kingdoms were split, the northern kingdom basically is considered a Gentile nation. And so the Jews, when they go back to the land after being in captivity in Babylon, they have no dealings with the Samaritans because, again, they are considered Gentiles. However, they know that the majority of these people are from the house of Israel, because this is the reason why she understood what a Jew represented, right? Verse 10, Yasha answered and said to her, if you knew the gift of the Most High and who it is who says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. The woman said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as well as his sons and his livestock? Yasha answered and said to her, whoever drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water, springing up into everlasting life. The woman said to him, sir, give me this water that I may not thirst, nor come here to draw. Now, this is the important part. He offers her living waters, right? But now he calls out her sin. And this is key. What does he say on verse 16? Yasha said to her, go call your husband and come here. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Yasha said to her, you have well said, I have no husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you have now is not your husband. In that you spoke truly. So Messiah exposes her sin. And then the woman said to him, sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain. So now right here, you see a Samaritan woman speaking of our fathers. In other words, confirming she is indeed from the line of Abraham. She is indeed an Israelite, but from the northern kingdom. So she says, our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where one ought to worship. Yasha said to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father is seeking such to worship him. The Most High is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. The woman said to him, I know that Messiah is coming, who is called the Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. Yasha said to her, I who speak to you am he. So I'm going to stop right there before I continue reading, because there's some important points here. He first calls out her sin by pointing out the obvious, exposes the sin so that she can herself say it, right? And see it. And right when he exposes her sin, she begins to speak of, where is it? Wait, I missed it. Our Father, see in verse 20, she immediately goes into, you must be a prophet, right? Our fathers worshipped on this mountain. So she immediately goes into the prophecy that was to be fulfilled by Messiah himself, which is why on verse 25, she says to him, I know that Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will tell us all things. So in other words, by exposing her sin, she recognizes the prophecy that was to be fulfilled, and that she basically, in other words, it's almost like the spirit within her is leading her to see the Messiah. And so I believe this is why Messiah goes and confirms who he is to her. And I don't know if you ladies have noticed, he had not done this, by the way, before, immediately with his disciples. But we see with this woman, he immediately lets her know who he is, which I thought was pretty interesting. Yes, big heart for that. I agree, Sylvie, because it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to see the fulfillment of everything in this reading, in this portion, spiritually, from the Torah, from the story of Abraham and Sarah, to the bride, whom we are and what we represent, how Messiah literally came for the bride that was once not a bride, but he came to restore through the house of Israel, whom we know in the book of Jeremiah, he had given her, meaning the house of Israel, a letter of divorce. We see in the studies of Isaiah and Ezekiel and all the prophets that he was to restore her back, which is why I believe he tells her, when she speaks of our father's worship on this mountain, he answers her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship for salvation is of the Jews, because we know that only the house of Judah had been given salvation, right? Had been allowed to come back to the land. But look what he says. But the hour is coming. And I get the goosebumps when I read this.
This just blew my mind.
Yes. Go ahead, Jessica.
No, I was just gonna say this is just blowing my mind right now. In a good way.
Isn't it beautiful though?
Yes, because she's basically representing, because she's representing Israel, the divorced bride.
Yes.
Oh my God! And how she had like 5 husbands, like all the idolatry and everything. Oh my God!
And then how she left that behind.
Oh my God!
I'm honestly like, I have goosebumps. I'm not even gonna lie. Just
wow.
I feel like, whoo. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. And I love this part, Messiah's words. But the hour is coming, and now is when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship him. The Most High, Haya, is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. In other words, he's telling this woman, you are talking about that. They say that the real place to worship is in Jerusalem. And he's telling him it's not even in Jerusalem. It's in spirit and truth. It's in the new Jerusalem. It's you have to be born again. And you will worship. And that's why he's saying the hour is coming and now is. Oh my goodness, I feel it. And there he confesses and shows who he is to her. I am he. In other words, I am Haya.
Oh my God.
She's totally representing Israel. Like, it's so beautiful.
It's like she represents all of us, like the lost scattered sheep.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And he comes and reveals himself to us.
And look how beautiful, going back to Genesis and the story of the servant seeking the bride for Isaac. We know that all the promises of Abraham were to be fulfilled through Isaac.
Wow.
Through the righteous seed. Through the seed of the promise, and seeking the bride oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
You see it now. It's so beautiful. That's why I told you this portion is short, but it's so beautiful. It's so deep, and it's so Sarah, beginning with Sarah, representing the matriarch, representing that bride who believed, right, through faith, and the seed being fulfilled through that woman of faith, and then being fulfilled through that woman of Rebecca, and the connections with Rebecca coming to the well.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness.
My goodness. It's so beautiful. Yes. I was waiting. I'm like, come on, ladies. Come on, ladies. I know y'all see it. Come on. I know you guys have to see it. And the connections also with her being a virgin, not knowing a man. Like, obviously, we know the Samaritan woman was the opposite. However, we know that the connection is because this is more foreshadowing the righteous bride, right? The bride that is after being cleansed. In the story of the Samaritan woman is now representing the redeemed bride, to bring her back redeemed unto him. And it is just so beautiful. And even if we continue reading, look even how the NKJV titles the next portion, the whitened harvest, guys. Like, does this like not blow your mind away? Like, I never stopped to question, like, why does it say the whitened harvest? If it's still speaking of the Samaritan woman, like, this is so foreshadowing and prophetic of the cleansing of the redemption of the bride, the redemption of the sheep that went astray.
Wow. Oh my God.
And look at the next title, the Savior of the World. Like, bro, I'm just gonna read because it's just mind blowing. So, verse 27. And at this point, his disciples came and they marveled that he talked with a woman, yet no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" The woman then left her water pot, went her way into the city, and said to the man, "Come, see a man who told me all things that I ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" Then they went out of the city and came to him. In the meantime, his disciples urged him, saying, "Rabbi, eat." And he said to them, "I have food to eat, which you do not know." Therefore, the disciples said to one another, "Has anyone brought him anything to eat?" Yasha said to them, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work." Woo! I love it. His work was to redeem the bride. Anyway, do you not say there are still 4 months and then comes the harvest? Look at the way Messiah speak in parables, guys. He's going into, like, straight into the mystery. Oh my goodness, my brain hurts. Like, there are still 4 months and then comes the harvest, which is 4 months. I'm pretty sure has to be the fall. Remember the connection with the fall feast and the gathering of the harvest?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's continue. Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields, for they are already white for the harvest. I'm gonna cry.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna cry. This has to do with the redemption of his bride, Israel, his people. And
Oh
he
my
who
God.
reaps receives wages and gathers fruit for eternal life, that both he who sows and he who reaps may rejoice together. For in this the saying is true: one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that for which you have not labored. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labors. It's so crazy because I've, like, I remember in church, they would read this parable, like, on standing on its own, and I would have never connected that with the Samaritan woman. You have to understand this whole chapter, it's one. It's all to do with the redemption of the Gentile bride, the people who were given a divorce, who were, straight away into captivity. They went after the things of this life, this world, becoming pagan and everything pagan of this life. And then him, the whole redemption story, and then him connecting that with the harvest and the fruition, like how he says, "For they are already white for harvest, and he who reaps receives wages and gathers fruit for eternal life, that both he who sows and he who reaps may rejoice together." It's, oh my goodness, bro, this is so beautiful. And I'm pretty sure the disciples are probably thinking, like, what is this guy talking about at this point? Because remember, the disciples did not know what just took place with the Samaritan woman. All they saw from what it says here is that they marveled that he was talking to this woman, let alone like that she was a Gentile, right? And they were like, what is happening here? But if we continue reading, hold on, let me just check the chat. I always connected it a lot to evangelism, but this is just next level deep. Yep. May we be like her when he comes back to recognize and know him. Oh my goodness, absolutely. I love the story of the Samaritan woman because I believe, woman or man, we all identify with her, meaning all of us that have come back redeemed and all of us that have come back repented identify with this Samaritan woman because she, like, again, he exposes her sin, but he recognized him. Notice how there's not anywhere that says she was weeping and saying, "Oh, por mi culpa, like, forgive me." Like, there's nowhere there saying that she repented. By her actions, we know that she did, for she recognized who he was. And I believe it's the same story with the thief that died right next to Messiah. there's not a part that says he literally repented, but the fact that he recognized who he was and says, remember me when you are in paradise, confirms that he recognized his authority as the Son of the Most High. And so I believe it's just us recognizing who he is leads us to repentance, because it is by faith. Yes, Silvana, it is by faith that we are grafted in, that we are saved, and the gift is given to us, to those who believe. Absolutely, Yasmin. It's all about his reconciliation, and it begins with faith. I love it. I love it. And then let's wrap it up. This chapter is so beautiful. Look how it continues. The Savior of the world, again, with the same account of the Samaritan woman, verse 39. And many of the Samaritans of the city believed in him because of the word of the woman who testified, he told me all that I ever did. In other words, the testimony of the woman led these Gentile people to believe in him. I don't know about you guys, but I have goosies all over. Goosies all over. She led the rest of the city, or many in that city, to believe in him. And then it says on verse 40, for when the Samaritans had come to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. And many more believed because of his own word. So there's two instances. We first see many believed because of the word of the woman who testified, and later because of his own word. So in other words, the way I see this is that first, we lead people to believe by testifying of him. And it is later his own word that transforms the people, that does the work in the people, right? So verse 42, then they said to the woman, now we believe, not because of what you said, for we ourselves have heard him, and we know that this is indeed the Messiah, the Savior of the world. So that connects beautifully with, first we believe because of your testifying, right? But now we believe because of his own word. So again, it is the words, his own word, that will transform people to truly believe in him. Oh, I love this. I love this portion. Love this portion. So I don't know if I'm gonna, I'm not gonna continue reading, because this goes into now, after 2 days, he departs and goes back to Galilee, right? But look at this, at verse 44. I just want to read to 45, actually. Look what it says. For Yahshua himself testified that a prophet has no honor in his own country. So when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things he did in Jerusalem at the feast, for they also had gone to the feast. So, excuse me. So we see that Messiah was able to, people were able to believe him outside of his own city. And he quotes from, because a prophet has no honor in his own country. So it's so crazy, because his own people did not recognize him. But however, those outside of the city, again, remember, he was in Samaria, which was the northern kingdom capital, the capital of Israel, is where he is received, and many believed in him. So I just wanted to point that out. And so going back to Genesis, connecting all of this, how the servant of Abraham goes to the woman who comes to the well of water, and that is the bride that he chooses for his son. Remember Isaac? We spoke last time we did the other portion of, I think it was Be'erah. Isaac is a foreshadow of Messiah himself. Remember the whole sacrifice of the son, right? Isaac being a foreshadow of Messiah himself, and Rebecca foreshadowing the bride of Messiah. How beautiful how the bride of Messiah meets the servant, by the way, the servant at the well of the water. How beautiful. This this portion is incredibly beautiful. I don't know if you guys want to add anything else to this before we go to the next chapter. So the chapter is a little lengthier, but we know that clearly Laban, the brother of Rebecca, later we know that it's the father of Leah and Rachel. And we know that Nahor, wait, no, not Nahor. What's the dad of Rebecca again? I forgot his name. It's something else. I'm confusing it with Laban, but it wasn't Laban. Laban is the brother. Can't find the name right now, but anyway, he gives Rebecca as a wife onto Isaac, and they send her with maids, and go with her. And we know that, let me see, verse 62, let's just wrap it up. Now Isaac came from the way of Beer Lahai Roi, for he dwelt in the south. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field in the evening. And he lifted his eyes and looked, and there the camels were coming. Then Rebekah lifted her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from her camel. For she had said to the servant, "Who is this man walking in the field to meet us?" The servant said, "It is my master." Such a foreshadow of Messiah and the bride, by the way, guys, by the way. So she took a veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and he took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. This is key, guys. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So he loved his wife. It's such a foreshadowing of Messiah loving the bride. Jessica, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add into the the Samaritan woman. Like I was just thinking about how it's like so beautiful because like it's like we just have to see him. Like if you just see the Messiah once, and not like I don't mean see with your physical eyes, but I mean like see him with your heart. Like if you encounter him just one time, you will never be the same. And like it's just so beautiful. Like every single person just has to see him, and like they will never be the same. Like, and I was thinking about how like the woman with the issue of blood, like she touched him and she was healed. And it's like you just have one encounter with him and you will never be the same. Like a true encounter. Like,
Oh man, that is so true. I love it. I love it. And it's a lot of people may say like, "Oh, what's an encounter?" An encounter could be like the most subtle of ways, by the way. It is nothing like crazy. Like I remember my very first encounter with him. I just knew it was him.
yes, exactly. Like it can be like in the most simplest way, like whatever way it is. But if you like see him, like who he truly is, like it will just change you forever. Like,
Oh, I mean, thank you for sharing that, Jess. I love it. I just realized the chat is going off and I haven't been paying attention. Yes, let me just read what you had. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to read back, but it's already been a few minutes, so I don't want to read. I'm not sure what the other things were pertaining to. So let me just read what you said. Jessica, you had said first evangelist was a Gentile woman. We plant the seed, Abba brings the increase. Absolutely, amen. And it's beautiful how he linked that those who sow and those who reap too. And that's all it has to do with his kingdom. Some of us will sow, others will reap. And that is it's so beautiful because this whole entire month or past months, Abba has been dealing a lot with my heart. And like I was sharing before, you ladies, about how discouragement will come to my heart. And it's almost like he's also showing me like it doesn't matter what my eyes don't see right now. There will be others that will reap perhaps what I sowed in faith and in love. And it's not the end of this journey, and not to give up. Like there's always someone who is going to receive the word willingly, and it will be transformed, whether for a season or for eternity, who knows. But we continue helping our Messiah by being his hands, his mouth, his feet, right? And laboring here in this life. Yes, it's never ever in vain. And laboring in this life because the goal is to see that white harvest, like Messiah said, in the fall, that white harvest, which will be ready. And I look so forward to that, especially the crazy life that we have right now in this crazy world, which is just getting crazier by the minute. just crazier, more ghetto by the minute. So I'm so excited just to see the final harvest and just rejoicing with him the same way, to see how Isaac rejoiced when he saw his wife. Is the same way our Messiah will come and meet his bride and meet us. We will come veiled. I guess the veiling comes not from being veiled, like being blinded, but more in awe, like in surrenderance. That's kind of like what I see. Yes, like those wise virgins, but more like I see the white garments, right? And just laying down pure and blameless. Yes, laying it down at his feet, like with the golden nose ring and the golden bracelets. It's almost like, I am yours. And to me, that nose ring and those bracelets represent that covenant, right? Like, I am yours, I belong to you. The betrothal, right? The betrothal of the bride. Whew, the betrothal of the bride, which took place on Mount Sinai with his people Israel. Oh my goodness, it's just so beautiful. Like, oh, I have goosebumps all over. So the last portion for tonight, I told you guys tonight was shorter. We have half of chapter 25. Let's just move it here. So we were to read chapter 25, 1 through verse 18 only. So we leave it there because next week we continue with the genealogy beginning in verse 19, the genealogy of Isaac. So today we were to read again till verse 18. And so it's very straightforward. We see how after Sarah's death, Abraham takes on another wife named Keturah. I did want to clarify that according to Jasher and according to the Targums, I do want to read it from the Targums to show you guys, Keturah was actually Hagar, which was his concubine. I cannot say whether it is completely true or not, but I did want to point out that according to scriptures, it was Hagar. And so chapter 25, this is the Targums, and I'm going to skip to chapter 25 because I had it on 23. Let me go down. Did I pass it? Let me see. There it is. Chapter 25, verse 1. We're going to see it says it. And Abraham added and took a wife, and her name was Keturah. She is Hagar, who had been bound to him from the beginning. Bound to him meaning because she was his concubine, right? That Sarah herself, we already know the story, had given her to her husband. And we know that she was the mother of Ishmael. Again, I can't say whether this is entirely true or not, but just showing all other options and possibilities. And I want to say I want to believe it's true, you know, because it would only make sense. Abraham was such a righteous man. I believe it's true. And again, we know that the problems that later rose up with Jacob having the two wives, right? Not because of his own choosing, but how it ended up Laban tricks him, and we're gonna go over that later. But we saw the problems that brought about. But I do believe that the initial, original, how do you say this? Like the intention of the Most High, of our Abba, was for a man to have one bride, which to me makes sense because he gave Adam only Eve. He didn't give him Eve and, you know, whoever else. So, yeah, let's just continue. So we see in this genealogy the other sons that were born to this Keturah, which again could be Hagar. And so we then see that, however, although he had all these sons in Midian, which we know Midian later is Egypt too, and makes sense because Hagar is from Egypt, right? So that makes sense to me as well, that would be Hagar too, because it confirms, and the sons of Midian were, you know, Midian again being one of the sons of Keturah, and later we know that becomes Egypt. So makes sense to me. But anyhow,
Can I share something really fast? I'm so sorry.
oh, please don't.
I just I had a thought because you were talking about like how like Abba always intended it to be like for a man to only have one wife, like one bride. And I was thinking about how like Messiah is our bridegroom and like we are the bride. And like there's so many of us in the body of Messiah, but like we're one in him and like we're one in the spirit. So I'm just like, oh my God. Like, and then I was thinking about New Jerusalem and how like the stones and just how like we're gonna be like the spirit and like I don't know.
Girl, we in the ruach. That's all I'm gonna say. Because I was gonna say that, but I'm like, let me. Okay, so the bride, yes, although it's plurality, it's one. And then the body is supposed to be in one accord. That's the whole meaning of the word in one ehad. In
Ah!
it is one body with one head. It is not many bodies, but one. Everything about from the beginning to end, it's about moving in one accord. It's beautiful because we even see when when the people came in the wilderness, they came into covenant with Abba, with the Most High, right? On Mount Sinai. They came in agreement, in covenant together as one people, right? And we see that even after they sinned, and he gives them an opportunity by adding the book of the law and giving them the Levites in the meantime, we do see even under the Levites, every time they would move, like the cloud from the tabernacle would move, right? It's funny because I was reading this during Shabbat with my children in the book of Numbers, that every time the cloud would depart, it indicated that they were to move. And every time the cloud remained, and indicated they needed to stay and pitch in where they were, right? So the cloud would depart, they would all move together. The cloud remained, they
Ah!
would all stay together.
So good. Oh my
It's
God.
so good. And then they would to stay together, though divided by tribes around the tabernacle, but they were together.
They were one. They were
They were
moving as
one.
one unit.
I love it.
Oh my God.
Oh, I'm telling you, this chapter, like I said, is short but meaty. It's so beautiful. Yes, Yasmin Abba is perfect. It's like perfection. Obviously, we know that it is. Okay.
Amen.
So again, we have the genealogy, and this is what I was gonna say. That even though he had other sons through what I believe was Hagar again, we do see in verse 5 here that he gave all that he had to Isaac. Yes, he gave gifts to the other sons of the concubines and that he had, etc., and gave them great possessions. We know that more in more details in that is in the book of Joshua, right? He did not leave the sons hungry either. He gave them many riches. However, everything he had belonged to Isaac, the son of the promise. And so, and that went from Isaac later on to Jacob. And then obviously, eventually the 12 tribes. And we all know the rest of the story, which we'll be covering in all of these Torah portions regardless. So, and then in this section, we also read about Abraham's death. So we have two deaths that took place in this section. First, Sarah at 127 years, and now we have Abraham at 175 years. And by the way, if y'all never read it in Joshua, I suggest you do, because it's definitely a tearjerker. When he passes away, I cried. I remember I cried. It's like Papa Abraham. It's like, how can you not? But all the details in Joshua that it gives is just so beautiful, because it wasn't just, and he passed and then all his people gathered and mourned, da da da. No, it was so much more than that. Like how Isaac came, his sons came, like everything about it was just, because here it doesn't say it, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that when Abraham passed, he got to kiss even Jacob. So in other words, Jacob and Esau were in existence already. Because we do see that he did die at an good old age. He was how old? 175 was he? I just read it. Oh yeah, right here. The 175 years. So it makes sense that he would have seen the sons of Isaac. So yeah, it says that both Isaac and Ishmael buried him. So here, again, it only mentions Isaac and Ishmael, but it's interesting that they bring back Ishmael. So like I had said in the last portion, Ishmael was very involved in Abraham's life as well. And so they bury him in the same exact cave that Abraham had purchased for the 400 shekels. So Machpelah. And so it says here, and it came to pass after the death of Abraham that the Most High blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac dwelt at Beer Lahai Roy, which Beer Lahai Roy is the same place that he was when he met his wife, Rebecca. That's exactly, and let's go back to that. Let me just show you exactly that at the end. No, it wasn't at the end. It was when, oh, here. Verse 162. Now Isaac came from the way of Beer Lahai Roy, for he dwelt in the south. So that's where he came when he found Rebecca. There you go. When he found Rebecca. So I just wanted to point that out. I think that there's definitely a connection with that place. Maybe it's good to look into it. So again, now we have the families of Ishmael and Isaac. And so we have this genealogy. So we have Ishmael, Abraham's son, from Hagar, the Egyptian, Sarah's maidservant. And then we have, I'm not going to read all the names, but we know that he married Nadav of a Canaanite woman, and he has all these children. So those were the sons of Ishmael according to their nations. And again, from him, was it from him? No, from one of the other sons is that comes Egypt. So then we have that he lived up to 137 years, and then he was gathered to his people. I'm pretty sure also in the cave of Machpelah. And then we have, and then we see that he was dwelling in the east of Egypt, which I think is interesting. Then here's the genealogy of Isaac. Oh, wait, we were supposed to only read till 18. So yeah. So, because we're going to enter into Jacob and Esau next week. But I do want to read, before we continue, I do want to read First King chapter 1. And this is when Solomon was made king. And this is when the promises begin to be fulfilled after David through Solomon. Let's just read. Let me see. Yeah, I only have a few other. Yeah, let's just read. So now King David was old, advanced in years, and they put covers on him, but he could not get warm. Therefore his servants said to him, let a young woman, a virgin, be sought for our Adon the king, and let her stand before the king, and let her care for him, and let her lie in your bosom, that our Adon the king may be warm. I want to stop right there. A lot of people will use this completely out of context to say that, you know, that basically they were bringing a woman to satisfy David. You know what I mean? Like sexually. I want to point out that this was not the case. King David was well advanced in years, like old, about to die. This young woman that was being brought out to him was literally to keep him warm, right? That's literally the purpose of that. It wasn't to keep him satisfied. It was to keep him warm.
Didn't it even specify that he said, like it said that he didn't have any relations with her and everything, or that he didn't want to, like?
I don't know if in the canon, but I believe I've read that somewhere else.
Okay.
But in
I feel like I remember that.
Yeah, right?
But I don't know.
About, maybe we read it in some of the, not sure. But the whole point, or maybe one of the Apocrypha books, not sure. Let me see if somebody's saying anything. Oh, these says that it says in
yeah, like it says it in somewhere like further down, I guess.
Okay, we'll keep reading. Okay, good. Thank you, Dee, for bringing that up, because I did not recall that. So, okay, so let's read. So, but I did want to point out that that was the main purpose of that. However, even with that, we see the connection to a virgin, the bride. Remember that King David was foreshadowing also of Messiah. We know that when they speak of the David to come was Messiah. And the kingdom of David was completely connected to the Lion of Judah, right? The Lion of Judah that came from the line of David, meaning Messiah. And so we see that before he dies, they bring him a young woman, a virgin, besought for our Adon the king, and let her stand before the king, and let her care for him, and let her lie in your bosom, that our Adon the king may be warm. And I love this because to me, this is completely foreshadowing of the bride of Messiah, because we are to become one with him. And we know from the beginning, what did he say in Genesis 1? We spoke about this when he said, let us make men to our image. And later when he makes the woman, he says, it is not good for men to be alone. So from the beginning, Messiah seeks for that bride. He seeks for that companionship. It's so beautiful, guys. So verse 3, so they sought for a lovely young woman throughout all the territory of Israel, and found Abishag the Shunammite, and brought her to the king. And by the way, interesting connection with the Shunammite and the Shunammite woman later with Elijah, right? The story we had read before. So, and remember the story with the Shunammite woman too, and her son. And bro, I'm telling you, everything is just like, ooh, okay, beautifully connects. So the young woman was very lovely, and she cared for the king and served him, but the king did not know her. Oh, so that's the part that Dee was referring to.
Yes, that's what I was.
Specifies that he did not know her. Meaning, and when it says did not know her, I believe it's saying did not know her obviously intimately. You get me? So it wasn't that he uncovered her nakedness, to call it that, right?
Yeah, that's what I was like. I know I remember it saying that in there.
You know, it's funny. I actually did not read this one ahead of time. I kind of just browsed through it to kind of like refresh my memory. But yeah, it's there. Everything is there. All right, let's continue. Then Adonijah, the son of Haggith, exalted himself, saying, I will be king. By the way, Adonijah is also a son of David. I will be king, and he prepared for himself chariots and horsemen, and 50 men to run before him. And his father had not rebuked him at any time by saying, Why have you done so? He was also very good looking. His mother had borne him after Absalom. Then he conferred with Joab, the son of Zeruiah, and with Abiathar, the priest, and they followed and helped Adonijah. But Zadok, the priest, Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, Nathan the prophet, Shimei, Ray, and the mighty men who belonged to David were not with Adonijah. And Adonijah sacrificed sheep and oxen and fattened cattle by the stone of Zoheleth, which is by En Rogel. He also invited all his brothers, the king's sons, and all the men of Judah, the king's servants. But he did not invite Nathan the prophet, Benaiah the mighty man, or Solomon his brother. This is still speaking of Adonijah, the other son of David. So Nathan spoke. Nathan is the prophet, in case you guys don't remember. Nathan spoke to Bathsheba, and obviously Bathsheba we know is the mom of Solomon. Oh, it says it there. No. So Nathan spoke to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, saying, Have you not heard that Adonijah, the son of Haggith, has become king, and David our Lord does not know it? Come, please, let me now give you advice, that you may save your own life and the life of your son Solomon. Go immediately to King David and say to him, Did you not, my lord, O king, swear to your maidservant, saying, Assuredly your son Solomon shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne? Why then has Adonijah become king? Then while you are still talking there with the king, I also will come in after you and confirm your words. So Bathsheba went into the chamber to the king. Now the king was very old, and Abishag the Shunammite was serving the king. And Bathsheba bowed and did homage to the king, and the king said, What is your wish? Then she said to him, My lord, you swore by the Adon your Elohim to your maidservant, saying, Assuredly Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne. So now look, Adonijah has become king, and now my lord the king, you do not know about it. He has sacrificed oxen and fattened cattle and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the sons of the king Abiathar the priest, and Joab the commander of the army, but Solomon your servant he has not invited. And as for you, my lord, O king, the eyes of all Israel are on you. that you should tell them who will sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Otherwise, it will happen when my lord the king rests with his fathers that I and my son Solomon will be counted as offenders." And just then, while she was still talking with the king, Nathan the prophet came in. So they told the king, saying, "Here is Nathan the prophet." And when he came in before the king, he bowed down before the king with his face to the ground. And Nathan said, "My lord, O king, have you said, Adonijah shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne? For he has gone down today and has sacrificed oxen and fattened cattle and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the king's sons and the commanders of the army and Abiathar the priest, and look, they are eating and drinking before him, and they say, 'Long live the king Adonijah.' But he has not invited me, me your servant, nor Zadok the priest, nor Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, nor your servant Solomon. Has this thing been done by my lord the king, and you have not told your servant who would sit on the throne of my lord the king after him?" I'm going to stop there just to show you. I believe this connects so much, foreshadowing, like David being the king, meaning being Messiah, foreshadowing Messiah. And the promise, like for example, the promise through the bride that would come to serve him, and through that service of the bride, the connection with his kingdom, who was promised through Solomon. So I just think there's so much here. Let's just continue reading. Then King David answered and said, "Call Bathsheba to me." So she came into the king's presence and stood before the king. And the king took an oath and said, "As the Adon lives, who has redeemed my life from every distress, just as I swore to you by the Adon Elohim of Israel, saying, assuredly Solomon your son shall be king after me, and he shall sit on my throne in my place, so I certainly will do this day." Then Bathsheba bowed with her face to the earth and paid homage to the king and said, "Let my lord King David live forever." And King David said, "Call to me Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada." So they came before the king. The king also said to them, "Take with you the servants of your lord, and have Solomon my son ride on my own mule, and take him down to Gihon. Let Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him king over Israel, and blow the horn," that is the ram's horn, "and say, 'Long live King Solomon.' Then you shall come after him, and he shall come and sit on my throne, and he shall be king in my place, for I have appointed him to be a ruler over Israel and Judah." By the way, guys, I don't know, like I see this so foreshadowing. Yes, we know that David is like a representation of Messiah, right? But in this, I also see like the father and having the son sit to the right of his throne, like at the right hand of his throne, and kind of being the fulfillment through his son Solomon, right? And I am not saying, because obviously we know that Solomon ended up bad, but I'm just saying in general, like how everything connects. Like, look how it says, "And he shall be a king in my place, for I have appointed him to be ruler over Israel and Judah." So all of the tribes, the two kingdoms of Israel, even though they had not been split at that time yet. So we see in verse 36, Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, answered the king and said, "Amen. May the Adon Elohim of my lord the king say so too. As the Lord has been with my lord the king, even so may he be with Solomon, and make his throne greater than the throne of my lord King David." So Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, the Cherethites, and the Pelahites went down and had Solomon ride on King David's mule and took him to Gihon. Then Zadok the priest took a horn of oil from the tabernacle and anointed Solomon. And they blew the horn, and all the people said, "Long live King Solomon." And all the people went after him, and the people played the flute and rejoiced with great joy, so that the earth seemed to split with their sound. Now Adonijah and all the guests who were with him heard it as they finished eating. And when Joab heard the sound of the horn, he said, "Why is this city in such a noisy uproar?" While he was still speaking, there came Jonathan, the son of Abiathar, the priest, and Adonijah said to him, "Come in, for you are a prominent man, and bring good news. Then Jonathan answered and said to Adonijah, no, our Lord King David has made Solomon king. The king has sent with him Zadok the priest, and Nathan the prophet, Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and they have made him ride on the king's mule. So Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet have anointed him king at Gihon, and they have gone up from rejoicing, so that the city is in uproar. This is the noise that you have heard. Also, Solomon sits on the throne of the kingdom. I just realized I read a lot more than I needed to read. We were supposed to only have read to verse 31, but in a nutshell, I want to just end with that. Obviously, Solomon is the one that took on the kingdom of David, but summing it up to verse 31, y'all should have told me like, oh, you're reading more than you need to. But basically, it's interesting that on verse 31, because I was going to point that out before, and I was just, let me keep reading. It's interesting that Bathsheba tells David, let my Lord King David live forever, even though they knew, David was going to die. But I think it's a foreshadowing again of the kingdom that David represented, which had no end. And so all of that connects with the promise that began with Abraham and Sarah through the line of Isaac. How beautiful, guys. It's the story of our redemption, our patriarchs, our matriarchs. I did want to show something really quick with Matthew. This little portion here, which has to do, I'm not going to read it, but this portion here has to do when Judas hung himself. And I just wanted to point that just the same way that Abraham paid a high price for the cave of Machpelah, we see that the money which Judah, the 30 pieces of silver that Judah obtained for basically betraying Messiah, we see that when he comes back to the Pharisees, he tells them, here, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood, right? And they said, meaning the Pharisees, what is that to us? You see to it. And then we see that Judas throws these pieces of silver, right? And he departs and hangs himself. But interestingly, we see that the chief priest took the silver pieces that Judas threw, right? And it says, it is not lawful to put them into the treasury because they are the price of blood. And they consulted together and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. So I thought that was so interesting that that's where they use that money to buy a cave, basically, to bury strangers. In other words, Gentiles, other people that are not grafted in. And it says on verse 8, therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. And we know that the potter's field is actually a cave. So I just wanted to point that out. We also see that in Luke. Is it in Luke? Yeah, I think so. In Luke 9, let me see. Oh, well, there's a connection with Luke 9. I am gonna read it really quick. It says, now it happened as they journeyed down the road that someone said to him, Adon, I will follow you wherever you go. And Yasha said to him, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Then he said to another, follow me. But he said, Adon, let me first go and bury my father. Yasha said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and preach the kingdom of Elohim. And another also said, Adon, I will follow you, but let me first go and bid them farewell, who are at my house. But Yasha said to him, no one having put his hand to the plow, and looking back is fit for the kingdom of the Elohim. And I know we spoke about this when we were doing one of the Matthew portions. But I do want to point out that this is the cost of discipleship as NKJV subtitles it. And basically, Messiah is not saying that you cannot go and bury your own. It's basically speaking to you of the matters of this world, of the matters of this life. In this life, it's more important to follow him than anything else that this life can offer. In other words, we see a connection with this with Elijah and Elisha. when Elisha wanted to follow Elijah, and he said, wait, let me go and bury, I think it was his father or something. I think Yasmin had brought that up last time. And basically Elisha then says, okay, basically forget it, I'll follow you, right? And so this connects so beautiful with the ending of this portion, which is our final victory. Very very well labeled, right? Which is Paul speaking in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 50 through 58. Let me just see the chat really quick. Yes, let the dead bury the dead. Excuse me. I also think of how they didn't keep the weightier matters of the law and were hypocrites. Absolutely. I'm assuming you were speaking about,
Yeah, like how they wouldn't want to use the money for like blood money.
that's what
So
I
it's like, yeah.
you're talking about the Matthew 27 connection.
But meanwhile, they're going to kill the Messiah.
Right? Right? I know the hypocrite. I wonder why Messiah would call them hypocrites, right? But anyhow, just to end this, we see what Paul, referring to what Messiah was saying about Sylvia, about the dead burying the dead, is more so spiritual than anything. And so we see what we were speaking from the beginning with the cave of Machpelah and the importance of why it was so important to Abraham to bury not only Sarah, but all of the patriarchs in the caves, including himself, right? I believe this is why. Paul says, now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Elohim, nor does corruption inherit incorruption. Which, by the way, I believe that's why there is a separation with the cave of Judas and the cave of the patriarchs, right? Behold, I tell you a mystery. Keyword here, Paul. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, which means at the last feast of trumpets, by the way. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must be put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible has put on incorruption, and this mortal has put on immortality, sorry about immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. I'm going to stop there before I continue. In other words, I believe Abraham and all of them, Isaac, Jacob, and all of them understood that the point of keeping them together was because they knew that there was gonna come a last trumpet day, the Feast of Trumpet, where at the twinkling of an eye, we would all be raised together. Again, Jessica, in one heart. Oh my goodness. In one accord, being raised together, the first fruit, being raised together. And so I believe this is why Messiah said in Luke, let the dead bury the dead. Don't worry about the corruptible things of this life, because at the end of the day, this is what's going to take place. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. In other words, eternity is what we should focus on. Verse 54. So when this corruptible has put on incorruption, and this mortal has put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your sting? O Hades, where is your victory? And this is quoting, I think it's Psalms. It doesn't click on it now. But yes, Messiah is quoting. Paul is quoting. The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the what? What did Paul say? Is the Torah. But thanks be to Elohim who gives us the victory through Yasha HaMashiach. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Adon, knowing, and this is key, that your labor is not in vain in the Most High. How beautiful, guys. I don't know if you guys want to share anything.
I just had a funny thought. Like
Yeah.
low key, they were like, when the last day comes, I want to be with my homies so we can grow
Oh
up
my
together.
God. Yes, yes. I hope not in caves, right? But in real life. Because that is a blessed hope. However, Messiah wants to pick us up. At this point, it doesn't matter. But I do feel like we will be part of that last generation who will be, we'll see, who knows? But it kind of feels like we're headed that direction. So I want to sum this portion up by going back and reading that Abraham's decision to purchase the land was driven by his spiritual insight and trust in the promises CHAYEI had given him. He wasn't just buying a burial site, he was planting a seed for the future, establishing a lasting legacy rooted in Abba's covenant. This act wasn't about personal benefit or financial gain. It was a powerful expression of his faith. By paying the full price, Abraham made sure he owed no one, leaving no room for future claims or conflicts over the land. The Most High revealed the end from the very beginning, and I say this every single time. The beginning declares the end. The bride is chosen from among his people and must be pure. Keyword, pure, set apart from idolatry and former pagan ways, and bearing good fruit by walking in obedience to his Torah. To be part of the bride, we must belong to Israel, whether by birth or by being grafted in, and live in purity and faithfulness. Yes, I know, guys, it's a narrow path. And I know we were speaking before of matters that, it is hard. It's hard to remain loyal and faithful, but he gives us his grace to endure. Alone we cannot do it, but with him we can. Yes, we know we may fall 7 times, but the word says that the righteous will pick up themselves 7 times. The point is not where we're weak. The point is not to remain in our weakness. What did Messiah tell a woman, and another representation of a bride, right? A woman who was in sin and that he basically forgave? He told her, go and sin no more. In other words, go and transgress my Torah no more. So when we fall short, Messiah, by his mercy, gives us an opportunity to yet do it again. Our role is not to say, oh, he forgave me. Okay, whatever. No, it's to remain loyal. By all means, go and sin no more. And again, Abraham wanted Isaac's wife to come from his own people, someone who would share their faith and values. So he gave his servant specific instructions and sent him on a mission to find the right bride for his son. This story reflects a deeper spiritual picture that just as Abraham, excuse me, I lost my line here. Just as Abraham sent his servant to find a bride for Isaac, our Heavenly Father sends the Holy Spirit, which I believe is what the servant, I forgot to say it before, is what the servant represented in the story, to prepare a bride for his son, Yeshua HaMashiach. According to the Torah, and you can find that in Leviticus 21, verses 13 to 14, Yasha, our high priest, can only take a virgin bride from among the people of Israel. In the same way, where am I? Sorry, I'm like getting all mixed up. Okay, here. In the same way, Abraham's servant sought a bride who would willingly leave everything behind to follow Isaac and embrace his way of life. So the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, is drawing those who are willing to follow Messiah and live according to the Most High's instructions. So isn't it beautiful how literally, truly, the beginning declares the end? And with that, we end this portion. This is the portion again of going back to pronounce it, CHAYEI Sarah, which is the life of Sarah. And again, a beautiful depiction of the life that we are to have. A life of faith of faithfulness, loyalty to our Heavenly Father. And again, I pray that this study has been a blessing. I know it has been a blessing to me. It's just so beautiful. So I hope that we can continue doing these studies, whether every Friday or we'll see how the schedule might shift. But I truly hope we can continue these live discussions because they are oh so refreshing and oh so beautiful. Yes. Yes, Yasmin, I saw your chat. I agree with you. I agree with you. But may we remain grafted in, may we remain loyal to him, and always remember, let's pray that we remain steadfast, because Paul even said it. Watch that you may not, like, I'm gonna paraphrase it, but in other words, Paul said, basically, do not lean into your own strength, because at any given moment, our flesh may fail us, right? So do not lean the same way that we're not to lean on our own understanding, the same way I believe we're not to lean on our own strength, but to lean on his strength. And the only way that we can lean on his strength is by being in continual obedience to him, to his word, and continual intimacy with him. Because the minute that we disconnect from him, oh, believe me, the flesh will take over. I wholeheartedly believe that we are not meant to do this walk alone at all. And which is why, by the way, we are to be also part of his people, the bride, in one accord, being as one people, as one body. Because when you separate an organ from the rest of the body, it will not have the right function. It cannot function the same way. That's why, yes, Jessica, we need each other. So let's remain together and in unity. I pray this has blessed you, sisters. Thank you for everything you guys shared. And again, I pray that we can continue growing from these live discussions. May Abba bless you all. Just trying to find there. See you next week, guys.